Welcome to the League of Women Voters, Chicago's Zooming with the Alderman series of interviews. My name is Deborah Halpern, and I want to let you know a little bit about the League. We were founded 101 years ago, right here in Chicago. The League is a nonpartisan political organization. We encourage the informed and active participation of citizens in government. We work to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and we influence public policy through education and advocacy. The Chicago League is one of hundreds of local leagues all across the country. These interviews with the aldermen are part of our effort to educate people about those who represent us in setting the policies and ordinances that govern us here in Chicago. Today, our guest is Alderman Villegas of the 36th Ward. Welcome, Alderman.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you for the invitation and to address the League.
We seriously appreciate you taking the time to be with us. We know your time is very valuable. I want to let everybody know that the Zoom session is being recorded and will be available for viewing after today on the League website. We'll be sending you, Alderman Villegas, and everyone who registered for this program who is not a member of the League, a link to the video when it becomes available. Also, everyone should know that we have provided the alderman with a copy of the questions that I will be asking ahead of time. So before starting on those questions, we'd like to show you a map of all 50 wards in Chicago. And the cursor will show you the 36th ward. And there it is. It's a very difficult one to see in that large map of 50 wards. And next up will be the actual 36th ward with some very strange gerrymandered lines. And who knows if those will change in the future. So if we could go back now. To the screen. There we go. So now we would like to get started, and that being the case, I would like to ask you, based on that map, if you could please describe your ward. For example, basically, where is it and the main boundaries, and in particular, the neighborhoods that you encompass.
Thank you, Deborah. Yes, so the 36th ward is located on the northwest side of the city. It's made up of parts of 5 different neighborhoods, starting from the east, Hermosa, Belmont Cragen, a little bit of Montclair, Dunning, and then it wraps around to the Portage Park community. It's currently about 68% Latino, about 4% African-American, and the remaining is primarily Caucasian.
And is the ward, is it mostly residential? Is it a combination, commercial, et cetera?
Yeah, so we nickname it the Bungalow Beltway because it's an area that is easy to walk. We're fortunate to have a bunch of bungalows and English tutors that make up the community. We do have our mix of 2 and 4 unit buildings, but primarily it's bungalows and English tutors that make up the 36th ward.
I've actually walked around there and it's quite pretty.
Yes.
The houses are lovely. And do you have any, areas that are strictly commercial and industrial, or is it mostly residential?
Yeah, we have a couple of business corridors. And so we have Grand Avenue, which is our industrial corridor. Armitage, Fullerton are your smaller businesses that are there. Fullerton Avenue actually has sees about 55,000 vehicles a day drive up and down Fullerton. So the small businesses are heavily viewed, and there's free parking, and it's good for foot traffic as well. And then I also have the old Brickyard, which is now Bricktown and Brickyard shopping centers. They used to be the mall back in the 80s and 90s, but now they're just shopping centers.
And what do you see are the key issues facing the people in your ward right now?
Yeah, well, just like everyone in the city of Chicago, when knocking on doors and speaking to residents of the and constituents of the ward, they'll vary depending on where you're at in the ward. So, for example, obviously, public safety is a big issue, and it's not just in my ward; it's actually all over the city. And we got to figure a way at the national level to address it by dealing with gun violence. And so what you see is that every state and city has its own legislation that begins to address it, but really we need the federal government to address it. So that way there's a uniform approach on dealing with gun violence. We also need to make sure that we're investing in communities, investing in neighborhoods. What we've seen is an initiative started by this administration called Invest Southwest, which I'm a proponent of, that begins to address in neighborhoods that have not been invested in for decades. There are areas on the west side of the city that are burned down structures from the Martin Luther King riots, which is just mind-boggling that these investments have taken so long to get there. And then we look at making sure that we have affordable healthcare. We just put up a Cook County clinic in the ward, and we were able to, with the community's input, get dental for the first time included in the clinic. And then we have some of the issues also about affordability of housing in the area. We have Logan Square, which is to our east, and gentrification has really impacted. And as a result, you've seen Latino community moving further northwest because of the affordability of rental units and housing stock. And then education. We need to make sure that we're providing our constituents and residents of Chicago a really good education, because what we've seen in the past is that our grammar schools are really good, but then parents are concerned about high schools, and as a result, sometimes they move out to the suburbs for high schools. And so in my ward, I have 14 schools, four high schools, and of the 4 high schools, 2 of them have really been laser focused on. One of them is a college prep, and then the other one's a CTE. It's a building trades vocational school. And we've really dumped a lot of resources into both of those schools to allow for options for parents that want to have their kids go to either one of those high schools.
And can you just clarify what CTE stands for, please?
Yeah, career technical education.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good. You do have a lot of schools in that area.
Yes, 14 of them, yes.
So a little bit more about you, please. When did you first join City Council? And specifically, why did you decide to run again in 2019?
Yeah, so I have always wanted to serve as an elected official. I worked in city and in state government in senior positions for almost a decade. And then I worked in the not-for-profit sector as an associate director, again, dealing with legislators and dealing with legislation. I did that for about 3 years. And then in 2015, as a result of the redistricting, they created a new Latino ward on the northwest side of the city. And having had experience in dealing with legislation, I thought that I was fit to continue my service, but now from a legislative standpoint instead of as a state employee. And I went up against the machine, beat the godson of the Democratic Party in 2015, and then in 2019, subsequently I ran unopposed. I was only one of 4 aldermen in the city of Chicago to run unopposed, and I was the only minority alderman to run unopposed. And that's really a testament to the fact that we listen to our constituents. We try to deliver for our constituents to the best of our ability. And as a result of that, my residents and constituents in the ward decided to allow me to represent them for another 4 years.
That's really quite exciting when you can run unopposed. That's a statement.
Well, it's also very humbling because, you know, you put into work for your constituents and you give them the answer, whatever the answer is, whether they like it or not. You know, it's
Yeah.
you know, because unfortunately government doesn't move quickly. And so there's a lot of times where just trying to inform constituents and letting them know that the process of a tree trimming in some cases can take a year, and trying to work with them through the process and let them know to be patient,
Mhm.
keeping them informed of where we're at in the process. Although they don't like the process, they understand that it's really out of our control as the alderman, because we're not it's not my office that's out there trimming the trees. It's actually a department. And so my job is to make sure that we're working with the commissioner, holding him or her accountable in trying to get the service delivered. And I think because of the fact that we were very transparent with our constituents, they rewarded me with another 4 years to serve them.
That's really nice. I mean, it's for you to be able to hear them, and for that people to be patient when they're looking out their window and they don't understand why it'll take a year to trim the trees that are near their wires, but they know you're working for them, and that's
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah. Well, I
So-
think you know, just in any relationship, the more that we can dialogue with one another, I think it makes it successful for both of us.
Mhm. Do you have currently any other employment beyond your service to the city?
No, I'm currently a full-time alderman, and that's enough. It's supposed to be a part-time job, but the reality is it's not. And quite frankly, I think that there's not enough hours in the day to try to serve the public, but we do our best to try to deliver for our residents.
Well, in addition to serving your residents, we know you serve as the chair of the Economic and Capital and Technology Development Committee of the council. And can you tell us a little bit about what matters typically come up before your committee?
No, absolutely. Deborah, you are right. I chair the Economic Capital and Technology Committee. And during my first term, I sat on that committee. And I remember when I became the chairman, I said, well, there's a lot of things that I want to do differently. I had 4 years and I sat on the committee, and there was just some things that I think we needed to address. So economic development is crucial. And as we're trying to get out of this pandemic, I served on the recovery task force in putting forward some ideas on how to make our economy recover a lot quicker as we were getting out of this pandemic. Our office and our committee was responsible for submitting the dining outdoors idea, which now everyone's enjoying. I had staff that was researching ways to continue to create revenue for the city. In Tampa, Florida was actually doing this. And so we thought, you know what, although we don't have the same weather, there's ways that we can try to keep these businesses from failing and allowing them options to serve residents outside. And so as a result, that came through our committee. The capital side of it, our committee led the efforts in putting forward the first capital bill in nearly 20 years. And we did it right during the pandemic because we wanted to make sure that we kept companies working during this pandemic that were specifically working on infrastructure projects outside and keeping the economy moving forward. So I had my colleagues initially a little hesitant because they were like, well, the state just passed the capital bill. There's a lot of discussion of a capital bill at the federal level. And I explained to them that the capital that we'll be focusing are more on the bread and butter issues that we get calls on a daily basis, whether it be curbs and gutters, sidewalks, repaving of alleys, repaving of streets. I mean, those are not very sexy projects, but nonetheless, they're essential to quality of life for our residents. And so we need to make sure that we're doing that. And then on the technology side, our committee led the efforts in making sure that the city put forward an IT assessment. Our IT, our information technology on our computer systems are really dated, and the assessment verified that. And so, you know, the city of Chicago, I often say that, you know, we don't manufacture or sell widgets, we sell a service, and we have a monopoly on it. It's not like anyone can go get a permit from somewhere else. They got to come through us. And so if there's a way that we can have technology at the forefront, delivering for our constituents and delivering for our businesses, I think we should explore that. And so as a result, we're leading the efforts on a technology standpoint to allow for technology to be invested in over the next decade to the tune of 350 million. So that way we could put forward a better product. You know, when people come to City Hall and say, hey, I have to go to City Hall, it's never a joyous moment. It's like, I got to go to City Hall. And so what we want to do is figure out a way to bring government online so that way folks don't have to come downtown to deal with documentations. If you can file your IRS documents online and never have to interact with the federal government, we can do the same thing here locally. And so technology is going to be the vehicle that does that in order to deliver services for our businesses as well as for our constituents.
Wow. It seems as though that particular committee has such a broad umbrella of work underneath it. However, all of them are interconnected.
Correct. I mean, you can't have a good ecosystem here if you don't have a reliable infrastructure to do work in. And so when we take a look at Chicago is the hub of the nation as it relates to infrastructure. We have most Class 1 railroads located in one area than anywhere else in the country. We have 2 airports. We have a port. So there's a lot of infrastructure investments that need to be had here. And then on the technology side, when you look at technology, you have a lot of large Fortune 100 technology companies that have opened up second HQs, headquarters here. And that's because of the fact that there's just a great pool of talent to pull from. And Chicago is still affordable when you take a look at both coasts. So we're taking advantage of these opportunities here, and our committee is leading those efforts.
That's very exciting. It really is. So outside of your committee, what changes would you like to see happen regarding the operations of City Council?
Of City Council. Well, I think that I have to applaud the clerk for finally getting us to a point where we'll begin to vote electronically instead of the traditional roll calls that have to come out. When there's a vote announced, the City Council member will now push a button to show how they voted.
When will that start?
That may start as early as next month. So we're excited about it because of the fact that when you take a look at Springfield, you can see the board and see how people voted, and we'll be doing that same thing here locally as well. The pandemic did play a little role in delaying the rollout, but as we're coming out of that pandemic, we're all anxious to get to the 21st century for voting. So
it might have been more helpful during the pandemic, though, right?
Yeah, well, you saw how crucial technology is, and how with the advent of Zoom and how important it was to keep government moving forward. And I think that we haven't seen the last of Zoom. I think that these meetings will be done via the web, and hopefully engage a lot more of the residents of Chicago.
Well, the league is right there with you, because that's why we have Zooming with the alderman.
Yep, and we appreciate that.
Okay, what are a few of the actions by the city to reduce the gun violence that you brought up just earlier? You did refer to federal legislation, but do you see something that the city could do?
Well, I think that when we're taking a look at gun violence and really just violence overall, what stems that issue is the fact that there isn't enough economic development in some of the communities that have been impacted. So traditionally, historically, there's been violence that's occurred in the city of Chicago on the south and west sides of the city, which you've seen during this pandemic, and the continuation of it is that it's starting to move all over the city, and that's because there hasn't been economic investments in these communities for decades. It's not. We're talking. I said earlier that there's structures that are still around from the Martin Luther King riots, And that's just wrong. And so we've got to figure a way to get investments into some of these communities and demonstrate that we are committed, not just to the central business district, but also committed to all the neighborhoods, and figuring a way to get companies to locate to these communities in order to provide opportunities. And so whether it be tax incentives, that's another thing that my committee does, is provide incentives to corporations to allow them to continue expanding within Chicago throughout the different neighborhoods. And so nothing stops a bullet better than a job. And we've got to figure out, on the economic development standpoint, how to be more strategic in these investments and generate some hope for some of these communities that have traditionally not been invested in.
So economic development, you feel, is the primary way we can try to reduce the gun violence in the city?
Yes, that's and not just violence overall and crime overall. Also, we have to also take a look at making sure that there is a sense of consequences. In speaking with police officers, a lot of them are frustrated. They're frustrated because they're getting the guns off the streets. They're getting the folks that are committing crimes off the streets. But then to only see that person out on the street a week later, or putting under home monitoring, and then committing another crime. And so there has to be a little bit more consequences. And so if that means that we need to go down to Springfield and advocate for stricter penalties, then we've got to do it. But we can't police our way out of this issue. We have to make sure that we're funding police. We have to make sure people's rights are not being violated. And we also have to make sure that we're investing in those communities. So it's a three-pronged approach for me in making sure that we're funding public safety. We're making sure that our officers are trained on how to deal with the public, but then we're also investing in the human infrastructure. We're also investing in communities that have not been invested in for decades.
Thank you. That's good to know. I'd also like to mention something that the League is very interested in. So we do observe the committee meetings, and then the council regularly will pass agenda items for which the actual contents and text of what is being approved are not being made available for public to see until days after the meeting as a result of provision Rule 41. That rule allows the mayor and the city departments to present direct introduction of items to the committee, and this results in the public not having a chance to comment before the vote is taken. So would you support requiring that any such item in their text be made available with an assigned item number to the public no later than 2 business days prior to the meeting?
Absolutely. The more that we can get items out to the public to be debated, the better. It makes for a better product. Listen, I've introduced an ordinance that this administration has not moved on, that would create a transparent process for the administrative rules. So as legislation's passed, that authority is provided to the commissioner in order to promulgate rules on how the legislation would be impacted. I introduced an ordinance that would require the commissioner, once the rules are promulgated, to come back to the body to make sure that the intent of the legislation was within the rules, and then have the public the ability to comment on it for 30 days. And then have the body say, yes, we approve of the rules as promulgated by the commissioner, because it carries out the intent. This administration has stonewalled that legislation for the past 2.5 years. And it's very frustrating, because I say that the more people that can comment on it, the better product it's going to be overall. So absolutely, I would support that ordinance.
Do you feel that there is a groundswell of support of other alders within that agree with you?
So it's really once I explain it to my colleagues rather, they do support it. But we all know that there has to be some will from the administration to want to support this. And here, look, I'm the type of legislator that I don't allow perfect to be the enemy. And so I'm always willing to try to sit down and find out what the concerns might be around an ordinance in order to make adjustments, as long as we don't gut it. And so I've been willing to be a participant in putting forward any concerns that the administration would have with my ordinance, which talks about the promulgation of rules, and to get it moving forward, because it is important. The fact that that this body provides that authority to the commissioner, but then it doesn't come back to us for a final approval, is something that I've been concerned with for the past, actually for the past 5 years, because I introduced it during the Mayor Emanuel administration, and then I reintroduced it during the Lord Mayor Lightfoot administration, but it's been stonewalled. Very concerning, very frustrating.
I'm sorry to hear that. We hope it goes through. We would like an opportunity to hear things before they happen.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. I think that if we want to work together on that, and we can talk to my colleagues on, I think that would be something I'd be interested in working with you on.
That would be great. Let's move on to something regarding voting. Currently, when one candidate for a mayor or alderman does not receive 50% of plus one vote in the February election, the top two vote getters are on the ballot for a runoff election in April, which requires 2 elections. What is your view about using ranked choice voting in February to determine the winner in lieu of a runoff?
Yeah, I'm still analyzing that, because I know that New York just did that in its last election. So I'd have to see, because when I look at the runoffs, the scenario that we have here with the runoff, where the top 2 vote getters move on, it's an interesting approach, but I'm not too well informed to how that would play out. But obviously, if there's larger municipalities that are using this approach and it's engaging more voters, more people to vote, I'm all for that. I want to see more people participating in the electoral process, because we have to get more people to help elect their government. And I tell people oftentimes, even if you don't participate in the process, you still get the same government. And so you got to figure a way to have, you should have a say in how your government is running. So I would be open to exploring it, and looking at what some of the an analysis of what worked well in New York and what didn't, and see how it would be relevant here.
That's great. I mean, I think that exploring the idea is good for everybody. It doesn't necessarily affect you when you're running unopposed, though.
Well, here again, that was a very humbling experience, and
Yes.
It was something that I was fortunate to be a beneficiary of. But really, it's a lot of hard work moving up to that point. So I don't want people to think that it's more of a reflection of our office and quite frankly my staff on how we deliver for our constituents.
All true. So if the league wanted to support one of your initiatives, what steps would you recommend we take to help you?
Right.
For example, let me just say that asking members to call or write their alder people, we send written comments to the league, we observe, but what do you feel is the most effective way that the league could help you?
Yes. So I should have called you earlier when I was pushing the guaranteed basic income pilot program that ultimately became part of the budget. It was an idea that I benefited from as a young boy. My dad died when I was 8, and so my mom had to raise 2 boys, and we benefited from a program called Survival to Death Benefits from Social Security, which provided my mom with a stipend. So that's why I was very adamant about getting this pilot program, this guaranteed basic income pilot program in place. And so I should have called the league to help me get it passed.
Yes.
But ultimately we did get it passed. The mayor did see the light and put it in the budget, because it's going to help people that are just, quite frankly, that are just struggling on a daily basis. And like I said, our family benefited from a type of program. That's why I championed it. By calling your alderpersons, that always gets our attention. So I would continue to urge your members to do that. One of the things that we're working on right now that we definitely could use your support on is the redistricting. Right now, the People's Coalition map and the Black Caucus City Council rules map, I have put forward two ideas on how the city should be reapportioned for the next decade plus. You talked about the gerrymandering earlier. Our version of the way the city looks is very, very uniform. And when your members take a look at it, you'll see that in our version, there's not much gerrymandering. But in the other version, there's a ton. But we've used data, the Voting Rights Act, and quite frankly, listening to the residents of Chicago as to what they want to see for the next decade plus. And that's how we earned the endorsement from the people's map. Is because we've tried to be as transparent as possible, allowing data to be the guiding principle as to how these wards should be reapportioned. So I would ask the members to take a look, get educated on it. Matter of fact, there's a seminar that'll be provided tomorrow online on Zoom. The People's Map Coalition will be putting forward where voters can get educated as to how the wards came to be, the maps came to be, and they'll be able to ask any questions. And so I would definitely ask the members to participate in that, but also take a look at the People's Coalition map as to how it looks and how we got to that point of reapportioning the 50 wards. We have 16 African-American wards, 15 Caucasian white wards, 15 Latino wards, 3 majority minority wards, and for the first time, an Asian majority ward. And that's because of the fact that you've seen over the last decade an increase in the Latino community as well as the Asian community. And quite frankly, had it not been for those two communities, Chicago or the state of Illinois would have lost 2 congressional seats instead of 1. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that we capture all that information and allow data to be reflective on the reapportionment.
Well, our leaguers have actually been very involved in the People's Map.
Good.
And the new transition. Do you see this going to the referendum? Do you think it'll be settled before then?
Well, I think that what this process of redistricting and quite frankly, not following the data, the Voting Rights Act, and listening to what the residents of Chicago wanted, have put us in a position.
You just went dark a little bit.
Oh, shoot. My lights just went out, that's why.
Oh. Speaking of infrastructure.
Yeah, well, I think it was the opposing.
They heard you.
They heard me. They cut the lights out on me.
Wow.
We're trying to figure out what.
Well, your computer's still working, so let's
Okay.
keep going. And they're having.
All right. Well, you know what we'll do is this.
Aha, that's a little better.
Okay. Hold on.
Turn on your cell phone flashlight. Okay.
Oh man, it looks like I'm in a seance or something like that here.
It's a little bit more dramatic, that's all.
Yeah. So you got to remind me what we were talking about.
Okay, we were just talking about the redistricting. The redistricting, and you were suggesting, how it's going to proceed. Oh,
yeah. So what will occur is that you'll have 2 questions that will be on the ballot. And I want to, for the record, clarify that the only cost associated from taxpayers will be the $550,000 if the ballot requires an additional page for the question. If the question for the referendum does not require an additional page, then there's no cost because we're already having an election. So just adding on the question to the back page. And so we want to make sure that folks are participating in this process for the next decade. And so right now we're at a point where there's two different competing maps. Waiting to see what the Black Caucus City Council Rules Committee is going to do, whether they're going to try to pass a map will they just send it right to the referendum? We're not sure. But
Right.
our map, our referendum question has been already filed with the Chicago Board of Elections. Actually, we submitted our map 6 weeks in advance to allow for the public to comment, and our colleagues, quite frankly, to comment as to what they envisioned and what they saw, so that way we can continue dialogue. Because there was just a lot of discussions around what they thought the ward should look like. And so we thought it was incumbent that instead of just talking about it, people have visual as to how the city would look like for the next decade.
Okay. One final question for you, sir, and that is, what are several things you would like you through your ward and through your committee would like to get done, or at least started during the remainder of your term, which ends in 2023?
Right. So right now we're in the process of hosting hearings with our Asset Information Services Department, as well as Chicago Transit Authority, on the electrification of our fleet. So what we want to do is we put forward a resolution that passed unanimously that requires the city to electrify their fleet by 2035 and the CTA by 2040. And this month we'll have hearings. I'm sorry, strike that. In April, we'll have hearings with CTA on where they're at in the process, what types of infrastructure investments they'll need, both from the city, the state, and the federal level, in order to accomplish that electrification by 2040. The city also, the AIS department and Asset Information Services will also talk about how they're going to accomplish the 2035 deadline for electrification of their fleet. We see this as two things. We'll be able to save some money on fuel, but more importantly, we'll be able to save the environment.
Yes.
Because what we need to do is realize that there's only one Earth, and if we don't take care of it, there's no place else to go. And we have the technology to provide these types of improvements. And so as a legislator, I'm going to push to make sure that we are doing these investments, that we are challenging these departments to provide cleaner alternatives and cleaner process for delivering the services.
That is fabulous. And so that actually brings us to the end of our questions. Alderman Villegas, I thank you so very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
And we really have learned quite a bit, not only about the council, but through your committee. I would like to remind everyone watching that a link to this program will be found on the Chicago League's website, and everyone who registered for today's program who is not a league member will receive an email with the link, along with an invitation to join the league, as well as to sign up for notices for future programs. And 2 weeks from tonight, on Thursday, March 31st at 6 p.m., we hope you will join us for Zooming with the Alderman program, featuring Alderman Samantha Nugent of the 39th Ward. And with that, I would very much like to thank you once more, Alderman Villegas, and I hope that your lights go on quickly and soon.
Me too. Thank you for the opportunity to explain what our committee does and introduce some of the initiatives that we're working on.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care.